Imagine you're deep into a competitive game with friends. One player loses, but instead of walking away, he flips the board, kicks the chair, and spends the next few years secretly plotting his return. This was the state of Germany after World War I. The nation was forced to pay massive financial penalties. Their military was capped at a fraction of its former size, and the economy entered a freefall. Jobs disappeared, and many citizens felt a deep sense of national humiliation. In times of desperation, people often look for a leader who promises to fix everything. Germany found that voice in Adolf Hitler, a speaker who told the public he would restore their wealth, their pride, and their power. He didn't just rebuild roads, he poured the nation's resources into a secret military expansion. Thousands of tanks, planes, and warships were manufactured in direct violation of the post-war treaties. The tension snapped on September 1, 1939. German forces ignored warnings and smashed through the Polish border, rushing across the countryside with overwhelming force. Having watched the expansion for years, Britain and France drew a line. 2 days later, they declared war on Germany. What began as a regional invasion instantly ignited a global crisis. When a defeated nation is punished without any realistic way to recover, it creates a vacuum where anger can fester. In that environment, a motivated leader can easily steer an entire population toward violence. This divided the world into two main groups. On one side were the Axis powers, Germany, Italy, and Japan, who sought to conquer and expand. Opposing them were the Allies, initially led by Britain and France, who fought to stop the Axis advance. The Axis forces utilized a strategy called blitzkrieg, or lightning war. By attacking with extreme speed and coordinated air support, they prevented defending armies from ever getting organized. In just a few weeks, France was overrun and forced to surrender. With much of Europe under their control, the Axis turned toward Britain. Since they couldn't march tanks across the English Channel, they attempted to bomb the country into submission from the air. Thousands of planes filled the sky, dropping bombs on cities and factories for months. However, the British pilots and citizens held firm. They stayed in the fight, refusing to give in until the air raids eventually slowed. This shift in tactics showed that traditional defenses were no longer enough. Modernized, rapid movement had rendered the slow-moving strategies of the past obsolete. Despite his success in the West, Hitler then made a massive strategic error. He broke his peace agreement with the Soviet Union and launched a massive invasion into their territory just as the seasons were changing. The invading army was prepared for a quick victory, but they weren't prepared for the Russian winter. Temperatures plummeted, freezing engines and trapping thousands of soldiers in the deep snow without proper clothing or food. At the city of Stalingrad, the fighting became a grueling street-by-street struggle that lasted for months. The Soviet army eventually surrounded and defeated the invaders, marking the point where the tide began to move against Germany. While the fighting raged in Europe, Japan launched a surprise attack on the United States at Pearl Harbor. This brought the massive industrial power of America into the conflict on the side of the Allies. By 1944, the Allies were ready to strike back. On D-Day, they launched the largest sea-to-land invasion in history, landing 150,000 soldiers on the beaches of France to open a new path toward Germany. Germany was now forced to fight the Soviets in the east and the Americans and British in the west simultaneously. Attempting to outproduce and outfight these massive empires on multiple fronts led to a rapid and total collapse. By early 1945, the capital of Berlin was surrounded. Allied forces pushed in from the west, while Soviet troops arrived from the east. With the city in ruins, Germany finally surrendered. The war in the Pacific ended shortly after, following the use of a devastating new weapon. The United States dropped 2 atomic bombs on Japan, causing destruction on a scale the world had never imagined. A wave of celebration swept across the globe as the final surrenders were signed. After 6 long years of fighting, the most destructive conflict in history was finally over. But while we often use metaphors to explain history, we have to remember the reality. In a game, you can simply reset the pieces. In this war, the millions of people who were lost never came back, and entire cities had to be rebuilt from nothing. The lesson here is that when a nation's grievances are ignored and dialogue fails, The result is mass death and physical ruin. Maintaining peace isn't just about winning or losing. It requires the courage to talk, the willingness to find common ground, and the strength to stop aggression before it destroys the world.